had come up that, automation decreases errors, especially user errors. It's definitely a big thing with regards to automation. And at the end of the day, it's just about making our lives easier, right? We want to try and offload as much work as possible, make time for those problem-solving tasks. All right. So, who has worked with Logic Apps before? No one.
I have.
You have. Perfect, Dennis.
Yes.
Awesome. Albert as well. Cool. Okay, cool. So there's a couple of guys. Perfect stuff. It's great to see. Okay. So what is Logic Apps? Sorry. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, it's visible
Yeah,
from my end.
sure.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So all right. So what is Logic Apps? So Logic Apps is a PaaS offering, so platform as a service offering on Azure, Microsoft Azure. Essentially what that means is it's a service that you get to use where you don't manage the underlying infrastructure. Don't have to worry about the hardware that it runs on or keeping that up to date. All you simply focus on is creating your workflows, and the platform handles the rest. Don't have to worry about the availability, performance, or scalability. All right. So nice, devote all your time to actually solving the problem, getting those workflows going, and making sure your automations work. Nice part of the Logic Apps is it is a visual designer. So in the screen there, we can see that, we have little building blocks. Essentially, all we're doing is we're connecting the pieces. Those pieces are called connectors. Get different kinds of connectors. You've got a trigger, which starts off your workflow, and then you also have your actions, which is all your subsequent flows. All right. Guys, if there are any questions, please just chip in. Don't worry about putting up hands or anything like that. We're all adults here. Just reach out if there is any questions. Okay. All right, then there's also 100 plus default connectors, which is awesome. Means that you don't have to worry about creating custom connectors, although you can. So out of the box, you can already, you can pull and use things like your Outlook. You can use SQL, automatically connect to all the services within Azure, whether that's your virtual machines, your VNets, it can be your log analytics, all of those awesome services. Okay. And another nice part about Logic Apps and more or less what it actually is there for is it coordinates your actions across multiple systems and services. So you receive that, whether it's a HTTP request, whether it's a alert or an action from a software or a service, you can pulls those details, starts the Logic App or it starts your flow. Actions creates a couple of actions, starts those, and you can fire off multiple things at the same time, wait for those to complete, and then right at the end you can send yourself a notification, whether that's via Teams or email, or push it on further through another HTTP response. So nice thing is that you can then pull in multiple services from one action. Cool. Any questions yet?
No questions so far.
Good. Awesome stuff. Okay, so that's pretty much what a Logic App is in a nutshell. All right, a couple of use cases for it. Right, so first one is order processing. So think of it like a retail shop. You've got your online website. You can, as a user, you can go and purchase your item. From there, the Logic App can do a couple of different things. It can take a look in the inventory, can make those updates. It can process your payment, and they can send a notification to the relevant department for packaging and processing the request further. All right. So that's a nice application. So that can be retail, can be websites, can be B2B platforms as well. Then you've got data ingestion and transformation. Essentially, that can be a API request or SQL that comes through. It could be files potentially. You can then go through that. You can go through that data, transform it a little bit, and you can always route it to the appropriate destinations. Example for that one could be you get a file, you scan through that file for certain keywords. You can then pull in things like what's that vision? You can pull in AI, so cognitive services. You can use that to then add labels and do your text filtering and things like that. And based off of those, you can then send a notification or you can store to a certain location. We've got SaaS events processing. So that's, for example, you receive a email. Within that email, there's a certain attachment, and you can then save that attachment to a storage account, for instance, somewhere where it's a shared, essentially a shared drive for you and your team members, as an example. Or you can use it on specific events, such as generating new leads or customer interactions within Salesforce, for instance. And then most commonly what it gets used for is scheduling tasks and recurring workflows. So that goes from daily reports, scheduling backups, scheduling alerts, or being notified on alerts. That's a nice one because that gets done via your recurrence trigger. All right. With that said, time for a demo. So it's kind of more where I want to spend some time with you guys. So I'll take you guys through a couple of use cases on things that we've done for clients in the past, or fairly recently actually, kind of solutions that or kind of areas they've identified as being a lacking point, where Azure by default doesn't cater for that particular use case. And then we have to try to figure out a way to get that. So one of the ones, for instance, was they wanted a compliance report on their policies. So policies is a tool that gets used essentially that does your governance, makes governance a bit easier, able to manage your services on scale. But they essentially wanted a solution that notifies them on the resources that are not compliant within the environment. And what that looks like is we have our trigger action. We've got a recurrence trigger, so that then would cause this flow to run on a weekly basis. We've got a automation account, so that contains a bit more on our coding side of things. We've got some PowerShell that runs on that side. We collect that info, store it in a variable, and manipulate that data using what they call compose. A couple of actions like parsing it, creating HTML table, and then we send those results through in an email. Okay. So nice, simple one. Nothing super complicated about it in terms of processing it. Just a couple of those connections. They've got ones a little bit more complicated. One where we start to bring in a bit more logic. So fairly similar on the recurrent side of things and how we are scheduling it. Just this one's on a daily basis. Get a bit more things, but the part I want to touch on this one is on the logic side of things. So we're able to essentially create, I don't know if you guys have programming background, or how many of you guys have doubled a little bit on that side of things yet. But you've got your if statements and your until statements and all of that. Essentially, you can do the same thing with logic apps, right? So we've got our until, so you've got essentially your array, and it's going to loop through all of those until it reaches the end. And we've got another for each, essentially does the same thing. And then we also have what we call a condition statement. Now, a condition statement is essentially just your if statement. We can also have our ands on our ors, which is pretty cool. And we appended that to a HTML string. And then right at the end of the solution, we sent it off via email again. It tends to be a recurring trend for the clients. They like things being done via email. Okay. Any questions yet?
Maybe just one question as we continue. So, is there any specific use case whereby one will use a logic app and Power Automate? Because there seems to be more resemblance between the two, the logic app and the Power Automate. So, in what essence will one decide to use a Power Automate flow, and in what occasion would one decide to use a logic app?
So, good question. They're very similar products in the end. So, Logic Apps is kind of seen as the big brother of Power Automate. It's got a bit more usability and a bit more connectors built into it. But Power Automate is a little bit easier to use in the sense of building out your solutions, able to do things like copy and paste your blocks. Just nice when you get into a solution like this one where you start to use things like a case statement. Not that one, this one. So we've got a switch statement, essentially our case, and then you could essentially, gives you an option to then copy out. So you could essentially just copy out the multiple ones and then just adjust the relevant fields, which is a nice thing about Power Automate, which you can't do in Logic Apps. But essentially very similar processing or solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay. So what I'd like us to do is I want us to build a solution together. So nice simple one. We're going to essentially automate the stopping and starting of VMs. So within Azure, there's an option by default to turn a virtual machine off, but there isn't one to turn a machine on. And what a couple of the clients do, or what we see as a use case for this in particular, is essentially turning dev machines on and off. So we schedule them to turn on when the clients are most likely to be working on them, so during office hours, and then we turn them off for the evenings. Helps just so the clients to save a little bit of costs. Yeah. So within the Logic app, we can turn on system assigned identity. Essentially what that does is it will allow, or we're able to assign permissions to this Logic app to make changes within our environment or to use something external to this particular resource.
So there I see you can either assign either a system assigned identity or a user assigned identity. You may want to touch the difference between the two.
So we can quickly. So system assigned identity is used for applications. So that's when you want to use, when you want the application to be running on its own and to use a particular set of credentials or permissions. User assigned is, it's going to mimic a user's access. So I could assign it my level of access and essentially it'd be using that.
Okay.
Right. So we're going to follow the model of least access required. We simply just want to make changes to a particular virtual machines within a resource group. So we've got our subscription, which is our high level container essentially. contains our resources or our billing entity. And then we've got a resource group, which contains our resources for this demo. And we're going to need virtual machine contributor to stop and start, or should be an operator as well. Virtual machine. Yeah, okay, just use that one. Virtual machine contributor for the time being. So we can only make changes to virtual machines. Won't be able to touch on the networking side or the disks, anything like that, any of the other resources. Okay, so that's been assigned. Access-wise is sorted. We're going to start building out the flow. So nice thing about Logic Apps as well, I believe Power Automate has it as well, is they've got a couple of pre-built templates. Quite a few, so you can, when a tweet is posted, you can do something. It's also complete solutions already built out, so auto tier Azure blobs based on the last modified time. So that would then be your hot access, your cool tier, to adjust your costs and things like that. So that's a nice one to use. Get daily reminders emailed to you. So you guys can see there's quite a few custom solutions already. Okay. But for the purpose of this one, we are going to be doing a recurrence. If by chance, and I'll quickly go back. If by chance you don't see your trigger that you want to use over here, all the commonly used triggers, you are able to start a blank template, and then can choose any of your default or any of your available triggers. And there are tons already built in. But for this case, we're going to be doing a scheduled on a recurrence. We're going to want this to run on a daily basis. But we want to be a bit more specific on the start time. Want to run on those hours. Start time we can take out. We can set the time zone so that it is easier for us to work with. Nairobi. And then we can say, let's have the machines come on at 5 a.m. Some people like to start working early. So let's make sure those machines are up and running by the time they get to office. We're going to then go through our connectors and we're going to find our virtual machines. Azure VM. So it's a nice built-in one that we can use, and it's got a couple of different options that we can do. So if we just have a quick glance over them, we can deallocate, can power off the machine, can redeploy the machine, we can re-image it, we can restart the machine. So it's kind of all your base operations, if I can call it that. It's not really making changes to the configuration so much, but more of stopping and starting it for this one. So we're going to start our virtual machine. And we're going to connect using our, just quickly sign in. We're going to connect with our managed identity. Going to give our connection a name. We can call it con for connection. And then we can call it VM start stop. That's essentially what we're going to be doing. And this is a system assigned managed identity. Okay, so the virtual machine that we want to start is sitting in that subscription. Our resource group is RCA demo. And then our virtual machine is VM1. So a nice one about that is, or using logic apps, is we don't have to worry about trying to find our resource, figuring out how to call our resource, right? We essentially just open it up, filled in the fields, or selected the those options from the fields. So if we've got multiple things we want to do within the same branch, we can just add to it. So we've got, in this case, we've got 2 machines that we want to start. All right. So those are machines that we've started. You can then continue further down with the branch on that particular side. If you want to add it to a variable and say that it started successfully, whatever the case may be, or you can bring the branches back together and then send out a notification from there. So once those machines have started, we'd like to get a notification about it to ensure that our machines are up and running, so we can have a look at the Office 365 Outlook connections under the actions, and we can use the send an email v2. It's going to require us to sign in. Going to sign in with a work or school account.
As that is busy signing in. Yeah, to me, I like this approach of having in that case, can maybe have the 2 action on the start and stop. Probably in that case, I am not using the auto shuts down, as you indicated earlier, to save on the cost, because as you all know that a virtual machine, it's billing to be fast on the disk that is attached to it, and the other one is on the compute. If I can manage to save a bit of coins on the compute, then that one can be a plus to me, and that will make me to move other resources to Azure. So to me, I feel that one is a very good solution, especially when we look at it from the operational point of view. As an admin, I don't have to be coming to the Azure portal now and then to start that VM. I can quickly have this in my place and be able to get notification once that one is done. So I see you already signed in. You can quickly put there some, hello, I hope this finds you well. Or how do you start your emails? Top of the morning.
Yeah, top of the morning to you. Yeah. Okay, so start filling in the required fields. So you fill in your to field. You can put in VM started, and then we can say that VM1 and VM2 has successfully started. And our importance can be normal. That's fine. There are additional parameters that you can do. You're able to do a from, so if you're sending it via a different mailbox, you can add your CC, your BCs, attachment, sensitivity, and you can also have reply to. Okay. So once we've built our solution, so it is a very simple solution, but one that gets used fairly often. You can then just click on the save button. And we'll save successfully. If we have a look at my virtual machines, you'll notice that this one's running for some reason. Let's quickly stop it. But you'll notice that both of them are going to be stopped. Let's quickly wait for that one to stop, and then we'll start the We'll start that runbook. We'll start the flow.
Okay, Dehann, as that runs, just a question.
Yes.
For example, you see there are some services, when you look at some Azure services like Azure Virtual Desktop, there are some built-in options like you can create a scaling plan on Azure Virtual Desktop, and basically you are defining, maybe you want this session host to turn on at a particular time, turn off at a particular time, maybe scale out at a particular time. Is it okay, safe to imagine that maybe in the background now that is Azure Logic apps that are building the logic for that? Or
Could very well be. It could very well be logic apps in the background running that.
but still the same thing. And let's say now if it's a single VM, just a single virtual machine that you want to monitor that if usage gets to this percentage, CPU usage gets to this percentage, it scales out. If it's not a scale set, just a single VM, is it possible?
It is possible. So what you can do is you can build a alert. So just a normal monitoring alert when your resource consumes X amount. So let's say it gets to 95%, you want that to scale out. Using the HTTP request, or you can then from that alert, you can use a action group that connects to the logic apps. And then from the logic app side, you can then scale out the machine.
Oh, okay. So you can even build even it can be triggered maybe by a budget that has an action group. Then that action group that goes and does something.
Correct, you can do that as well. Yeah. So I'll quickly show you. It should be done. So if we go to monitor on my side, I think I've got the one set up like that still. If we go to alerts, we can go action groups. This one does connect to it still. We can see that our action is calling onto a logic app. So it's calling this LAVM logs alert. And what that initial condition was is it's looking at a custom log search from a log analytics. And that essentially told us when a VM got deallocated on any of the subscriptions within the client environment. But yeah, so then that sends through from the alert to the action group, and then from the action group, it calls onto the logic app.
Okay.
Right. Let's double check, make sure the machine stopped. Okay, perfect. Machine has stopped. So we're going to execute the flow. We're going to test it out, make sure that it works. So you can see the occurrence has gone past. That's been successful. Currently starting our machines. Status code 200, so it passed successfully. VM2 is still busy starting.
So maybe Dehann, as we're waiting for the second virtual machine to start, while you were on designer, I noted that there was a pop-up, especially when you were filling in the body of the email. And within that pop-up, you had two tabs, the dynamic content and the expressions. Do you mind maybe touching on that?
Yep. Touch that now. It's a very good point. Thank you, Dennis. So let's quickly go back to it. So there's two tabs, which is for more of your dynamic content. I could just use the body as an example. So dynamic content is content that gets picked up throughout your logic app or throughout your solution. So for instance, we can create a variable. built-in variable. Can initialize the variable. Give it a name, string, past. Let's make that a boolean. Boolean past. Initial value, we can set that to be false. We can build this out to say set our variable here to be true. See if that works. And then that one can be condition. Control condition. So essentially our dynamic content becomes our variables. So whatever things can change, so whether that's your body or a response that you receive from a connector or something like a variable. And then your dynamic content or your expressions is where you build things out. So we can say, you've got your logical functions there, converse, got some math functions, date time, but that becomes a bit more on your data manipulation side of things. And this is a bit more on the low code side. So we had the whole no code side, which we did for the starting of the VM, and this would fall more onto the low code. So they have to have some understanding of coding and how to build out those expressions. But very powerful tool, those expressions. And to get the most value out of your expressions, you would use a compose. From there, you're able to extract data easily. It just gives you essentially a blank canvas to manipulate the data. Dennis, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we can have a look then at our solution, double check that it's ran successfully. We can see that it's taken 2 minutes and 48 seconds to complete. Our virtual machine started. Our second one took a little bit longer to start. And then it sent out an email. So we can double check and make sure that that actually did work. And then we can see that our VM1 and VM2 are both running. I can double check our emails. Just quickly opening mine up. You can see nice and simple. VM1, VM2 successfully started. Okay. You're able to build out the content a little bit more if you want to. You're able to make some nice tables, change the fonts and things like that. You can really play around with the design and get the most out of it. All right, but this was just a nice simple solution in terms of showing a practical use for the logic apps and how we found that most clients are implementing it to begin off with. Any questions?
A question from my side, but first of all, thanks Thanks, Dehann, for that. I think it has made me curious to play around logic apps. But then my question is, for when you started, you mentioned that there's some use cases where you also leverage AI side. So maybe could you just give an example of a use case where maybe a flow plugs into an Azure AI solution, for example?
Okay, so use case, and I haven't come across too many at work or that clients want to implement, but I saw an example of one where there is a file, and then so a file gets uploaded somewhere. You open up that file using the Logic app, so you pull all those bytes and you view essentially what the file states. You can then use computer vision to identify a particular set of words in there, whether that's somebody's name, link it towards a particular product, whatever the case may be, and then based off that apply certain tags or redirect that file to a particular folder. So that's an example of putting in computer vision, for instance.
All right, that's interesting. And also, while you are showing the connectors, the built-in flows, I saw there's something that can pull some maybe messages from Twitter as well. So if you analyze messages from Twitter, can that be plugged into something like a natural language processing solution in
Definitely. Definitely. And they can definitely do like your sentiment analysis and things like that.
Okay.
Find out what the kind of general tone is that people are using regarding your business.
Okay. Yeah. It has value.
Big value, definitely. So that's the thing about Logic apps, right? It's just there to cater as the middleman. You use it to receive information or to start something, and then from there you are essentially actioning the rest or calling upon other services.
Okay, thank you so much. Dehann, I have to confirm the name first. Or maybe I can see Albert has got a question. But okay, thank you, Paul. Just a quick one to Dehann. From the point you are sitting, are you able to tell maybe the incorporation of now the AI, like the AI to help you to build out the flow, just the same way when you go to maybe the Power Platform where you can start your flow from AI, you just use the free language, for example, build me a flow to do this and this, and then it gives you all the triggers and the actions. Are you in a position to tell maybe when we're expecting that? Not that we are lazy, but that would be a blast.
Would make life easier. Unfortunately, I don't know when Copilot, something like that, is going to be released for Logic apps. But it would be nice.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for me? All right.
Okay. If there is no any other question, I want to take this time. Thank you so much, Dehann. I didn't know that also in the portal we have got such a powerful tool. I was expecting codes all over, but at least I've gained something tonight. And my takeaway is that Logic App is a big brother to Power Automate. I don't know what about you who's been in the session, and maybe we can ask Samson. Maybe what is your takeaway?
Oh, okay. For me, it's the that having that middleman that can relay like sort of tie together different sides of a solution. So if, for example, you're getting data from one side, you can use a logic app to direct it to another end. So yeah, for me, it's that middleman aspect.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe any other person, just one person, as we wind up. Any key takeaway from the session from Dehann? James Juma.
Yes, Karani. On my side, I'll just like to thank the speaker for such an insightful session. And yeah, I believe this is the future of automation, especially to some of us who, don't have experience with coding into details. And I believe that using such logic apps with the enhanced functionality of low code will enable us to develop very key applications and our business logics that of course will go a larger hand in solving the real world issues. So on my side, I will just do more practice on the logic apps. And yeah, I believe if I got any issue, I see Paul, you're also great in the logic apps. I'll definitely reach out. But on my side, I'd just like to thank the speaker for such a wonderful session. And that is it. Thank you, Paul.
Please do. If you have got any issue, please do, James.
Oh, and I forgot to mention last year, there's a hackathon that did happen. We used the logic apps. I remember I built it was a budget app that will help the sales department in tracking the expense, and my team managed to be to come first in that hackathon. So and remember that time I didn't have experience in code, and that's why I'm saying that this logic app, I believe it's something that's going to, not something that is going to, but it's already transforming, the idea of coding. So yeah, thank you. Back to you, Paul.
Exactly, I do remember your group showed us dust, and we accepted. Okay, so maybe a parting shot from Dehann as we close up the session.
Right. Thank you guys for having me. James, well done on winning the competition on the hackathon. It's awesome to hear that you guys are playing around with it. Hopefully I managed to spark some interest in playing around with the technology a little bit more, and you guys finding out the capabilities for yourself. That's all I can hope for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and welcome again, Dehann. And there is a way we always finish up the session, and the most appropriate person to take us through